Oh, hey. Fancy seeing you guys here. Well, I want to welcome you to my studio space. I'm going to be spending a lot of time here this semester. As I imagine you're going to be spending a lot of time in your personal space on your computer. So I just want to welcome you back to the semester in whatever fashion we're going to do it. But first off, I want to start with just a couple things before we get into our next assignment, our final assignment we're going to spend the rest of the semester on. One is, I'm a youngish faculty who spends a lot of time with computers and camera equipment and everything. So I'm very familiar with turning some of these things to be an online course. But I imagine you have a lot of faculty who've been teaching for 20, 30, 40 years, who've never had to take their courses online before, and all of a sudden they have to learn this technique and learn this gear. So I know you're going to be patient with me, and I know I'm going to be patient with you as we're trying to share information with each other via the internet. But I would hope you give the same amount of patience you give to me to your other faculty, especially if they aren't as savvy with computers or camera gear or microphones or whatever it is that they're using. So that out of the way, I'd like for us to kind of dive right back into Canvas to first talk about what we're doing the rest of this semester, like how we're going to organize certain things. And then after that, we'll talk about our very first, and after that, we're going to talk about our big fiction, nonfiction project, okay? So let's turn this computer around. So as you can see, I'm going to be using both of my units of AS300, so I don't have to make this video twice. So in case you don't see your name on a list, don't worry, it's there on your Canvas page. I just don't feel it's necessary to repeat the whole thing twice. So anyway, not a ton has changed. I still haven't, office hours. I don't think it's necessary to change that. I mean, I could, but you guys know the drill now. I think most importantly is the calendar and the assignment. So I just wanted to quickly go over a few things and give you guys some heads up on some of the software we're going to be using here. So jumping down, that's a different class. We are AS 300-001 and AS 300-002. So I'm just going to highlight one. Just you guys know the difference between 5 p.m. and 3 p.m. But the classes pretty much are identical at this point. So today I'm going to talk about, eventually I'm going to talk about our brand new fiction, nonfiction project. As you can see, some things have moved around a little bit. Some things haven't at all. They stayed the exact same place. Their reading assignment is still due the same day, though we won't discuss it in class anymore. You'll just turn them in. Going down through the list here, I'm going to have demos, but though I'm going to shoot them live here in my studio or do them on my computer here on the screen capture. So I'm going to be doing some production here, so don't worry. I think I can get it done. We have student presentations this entire week. We have the Group A going this week where you just submit your video and we'll see it online. And then we'll have, this whole week is pretty much nothing but that. And this is when the museum is due, though you can't really go to any museums right now unless wherever you're at happens to be, I don't know. I can't imagine how you can do that right now, but I just left the original due date just because it's, there's no reason to shift it now at this point. But going on to the very end of the semester, the schedule really hasn't changed too much all the way to the finals week. I do want to go to a few assignments that have shifted. So going down here to art experience, the Robert C. May lectures are already over. They were early. Actually, that thing I always joked about how they're being so early in the semester ended up being their benefit since you pretty much did them all already. Reading assignment, it's pretty much the same. I have the questions already in there. You just submit them online. You submit them to me on the assignment page. You'll see a little submission right here. So answer these questions on the readings by the date and submit them here. And then going down to museum visits, as you can see, we'll make this one easy. I just added this right to the very top. So The way this is going to be done, if you hadn't done the UK museum visit, which it was again due later, which is fine if you were going to wait a little bit longer. Now you can't go. The museum is closed, so don't worry. Like I said in my email earlier, and I said to a few people that grabbed me in the hallway before we shut down before spring break, some assignments will just be omitted. So that means if you didn't do the UK assignment page or the quiz, the handout that I gave this everyone or sent it out, don't worry. That means like the grand total of the semester is slightly shifted a little bit. So I have it where this assignment's worth 5 points. So that means if you just didn't get a chance to turn that second one in, it's those. See how I divided the assignment between 2.5 points and 2.5 points? That's the UK museum and the 21C museum. So some people have already done the 21C museum quiz because we were all there. I gave it to one person who was absent, who was sick that day. But if you turned it in, well, then you've already got 100% on that assignment. If you turned in the UK museum one in, which a couple of people jumped the gun and did it, well, then there you go. You get your 2 parts. That's worth your 5 points. If you didn't get a chance to do it yet, and again, now it's too late, well, don't worry, that 21C is worth the whole thing. If you just didn't do the 21C museum visit and you never got with me about the quiz, which was a very few people, then I don't know if we can do a makeup report because there's no museums open at this point. So, and it's way past the deadline of when we went to the 21C Museum Hotel, which was a few weeks ago. So if you have any questions about this, please email me. I'm happy to talk to you about it and that kind of stuff. But I just made it easier instead. Like if you didn't get the UK museum, then you don't need to turn it in. It won't have no effect on your grade outside of it. Makes the other assignments worth just a little bit more, a small percentage. If you did go and you haven't just filled out the quiz yet, you just, you're doing it from memory or you took notes, turn it in as soon as you can. Okay. I mean, as soon as you can. Let's go to some other assignments. Group presentations. This one's gonna be fun actually. So it's still there. This is where the update since we went online. So now that we're online, this project has changed a little bit, though much still stays the same. I now require that you upload your videos online. You're going to be shooting these. So don't worry, you don't need production. You don't need all this crazy stuff. In fact, the exact same software I'm using now, you can use. In fact, with your UK login, your jso233@g.uky.edu, if you use that login, which I placed the link below, you will get a free pro account this semester. And it's really easy. And I put a couple of videos at the very bottom. I'll get to it. So I'm trying to keep it really easy on you guys. I don't require like the audio to be like amazing as long as we can hear you talking. And as long as we can see the visuals as you're sliding through your PowerPoint here, you make it like presentation mode so that we only see your pictures and you just kind of flip through them. Now, I do understand that everyone's working in groups, groups of 3, groups of 4, some groups of 2, because we've lost a few people out of the class who've dropped. Don't worry. I'm asking that if you can, it's really easy to combine every 3 people's videos or 2 people's videos together in iMovie. Really, really easy to do. Again, I have a video at the bottom that shows exactly how to do it. If you really like all 3 of you guys or all 2 of you guys or all 4 of you guys have no clue how to do that, don't worry, you can just give it to me and I'll do it for you. So you just record your, 2, 3, 4 minutes of your segment, your photographer, or you can chop it up into 8 different segments where 4 of you are each going back and forth and you have all these different segments. That's fine. You just, you can piece them together that way, or you can send me the files under upload your PowerPoint here. Here it is. Upload your video here. This is the finished video or video segments in the subfolder. The only thing I ask is you give me 24 hours so that and you let me know, email me saying, hey, we know nothing about editing or even that. So can you just throw those 3 together? I'm like, yeah, sure. All you got to do is I already have you guys subfolders here, which is really nice of me. So you just put your segments like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 or whatever, and I'll just quickly throw them in iMovie together. Again, it's pretty easy to do. You could do it yourself, but if, I know this is not a video class, I don't want to make it mandatory. So I'll do it for you if needs be. But like I said, give me 24 hours. So since our class may be at 3 p.m. or 5 p.m., turn in the segments, at 3 p.m., 5 p.m. the day before. Or if you know how to do it yourself, it's pretty easy to do. Then just submit it at the standard deadline the night before. It's really important you turn in the night before because everyone needs to be able to come in to see these videos and actually critique them. So that's a new part of the assignment. So right down here, I've added one little part just because we had to change the assignment a bit because it's online. I can't really see everyone's response. But so I'm asking you to just fill out a little quiz giving your opinion about their presentation. And don't worry, no one's going to see it because you're going to submit that quiz to this assignment page itself. So that means you're going to turn in 5 different, I guess that's 4 since you're in one of the groups, 4 into this assignment. So at the very bottom, you'll see that you have a place to turn in assignments. And I've set it up where you should be able to turn it in over and over and over for each different groups. So I'll see like 4 different submissions from you as the semester progresses. So don't worry, they won't get confusing. The only thing I ask you to do is just kind of put your last name on there and page of the groups. Okay? So here's a link to the questions that I want you to like kind of respond to right here. So you just kind of circle which group are you're looking at. Is it group B, C, or D, or E, or what have you, which their letters are below on the assignment page. And just in your own, like you can type it in a Word document and kind of answer these questions. And some of these, I put a 1B in case they did more than one photographer. They may not have. They may have just done one. That's okay. But just answer these questions. And you can even add things like comments at the bottom. It's totally great if you're like, hey, I really, really like that. Or I was very concerned about the time. It was way too short or way too fast or whatever. And I'll be doing my own as well. But I really love seeing your guys' advice and suggestions. So going back to here, just remember one of you guys, whoever has the PowerPoint, the PPT, turn that in as well, which is a separate location. I've made one. This is actually separate for each group. This is the student PowerPoints. And as you can see, this is how I see it. I see student PowerPoints, student presentations, the videos. So don't forget to turn in, answer the questions when you're looking at other people's presentations, turning them into this assignment page, turning in your PowerPoint, or one of you in your group has to turn in. You don't all need to do it. Just make sure someone does that and follow up and make sure if you're relying on someone, they do it. And then upload your videos to this link here. Either it's a finished video that you did yourself, where someone combines all of them together for you, or you have me do it 24 hours ahead of time. The rubric is shifted just a little bit. It's still worth 10 points, but now I've added a few points, 2.5, which is 25%, to your response, your feedback, what you think of it, okay? So here's some of the helpful stuff that I talked about earlier. I don't really need to go over them again because I presented them to you earlier in the semester, but I removed, came in the class on time. If you turn in the assignment late or it doesn't upload fast enough, because some of these can be a little big, 12-minute video can upload a while. That's why I don't want to make the deadline the day of the class, because if it's still buffering for 30 minutes or your Wi-Fi is terrible at home, then we don't get to review your project. So that's why it's the night before. So I don't have like a late presentation. That's just a late assignment. So these groups are still the same, though I've moved the dates a bit. I pushed things back just a little bit, just to give you more time. You can see we have a couple this day and a couple this day. Reach out to your individuals and make sure everyone is still corresponding. In this big shuffle, someone may have decided, I don't need a photo class anymore. That's their choice to make. Just make sure, I didn't highlight anyone for any specific reason. I'm just grabbing random names. But just make sure that that they're all still on board. I still have the examples of previous people's presentations, though you can see it's a lot different for us now. But just in case you need some guidance. And here's some helpful links for how to use Zoom to do screen capturing. I find it really easy. I picked it up in just 5 minutes. So first things first, you got to make an account. So UKY, University of Kentucky's website, has made a personal login for us. If you click on here, and I already have a login, it'll probably take you to my login. There's me. But you just make your own with your own like uky.edu, or maybe it was .g or at g.uky.edu, and then you get a free pro account, which means you can make longer videos and all that kind of stuff. This is also the same account you're going to use for a couple of our critiques. So I'm going to ask all of us log in together and do kind of have a critique together. So we don't got to do that many times. I'm not going to force everyone to meet up and do these online group Skype meetings like every week. but just a few times. Most of the time, I'm going to have you correspond with each other via email or watch pre-recorded videos of me doing just this. It just makes it more streamlined. How to do a screen capture of recording literally what's on your screen. This is where this person saves it to the cloud. Though you can just click one slightly different thing and it saves it to your hard drive, which is what I'm doing. I'm not using the cloud. I don't trust the cloud for this service. I don't know the Zoom service. I just have it saved to my internal hard drive, and then I upload it myself to Google Drive, which is what we're using. How to save your screen capture onto a local hard drive, which is a link on how they do it. This is on a PC. This is on a Mac. They easily translate with each other. And then this is that one like little short iMovie, how to combine 3 different video segments together. So when you have 3 or 4 or 2 different people talking from different locations in their living room or their dining room or wherever they're at, or in their dorm room if they're staying, you can easily together. If someone wants to use Premiere, like someone took AS285 or something like that, that's totally fine. You don't have to use iMovie. iMovie is just the easiest thing out there that everyone has if they have a Mac. A PC has an equivalent. I don't know the name of it, but if you own a PC, I should hope you know it. But if you need help, please let me know. I can easily email you back. I can do the research for you. So I want to make it easy on you guys, and you don't have to make it amazing production like we're all YouTubers all of a sudden. But if you can do that, that's awesome. That's great. So anyway, so that's this assignment. It's changed a bit. I'm requiring you to still do it, though we've gone online, which maybe that's kind of the new era. Anyway, we need to be progressive. So here is our biggest project. That's the vast majority of the rest of the semester, and I've adjusted it just a little bit, though I haven't had to adjust it very much, actually. So I'm going to go through here with a little bit of detail because there's a lot of details in this assignment. So this project is open to allow students to utilize any of the techniques learned in this course. Mid-critiques will allow the students to show progress and will help the instructor in aiding each student's project. Each student is asked to come up with a body of images that result from their adaptation of a piece of text. This can be a novel, an essay, a script, a comic, a screenplay, a poem, or any other text of interest. You must confirm with the instructor beforehand. When I say text of interest, like a poem you wrote or an essay you wrote, that's fine, but you need to talk to me first because it could be for another class or different circumstances. Just work with me. And I've always worked with individual students when they've done their own poetry or their own novel, their own thing they've written or wanted to use. So you can pick something that has never been adapted to TV, movies, or photography, or ones that already have, as long as you make your own rendition of them. In fact, I say be cautious of using a movie or a show because it's almost impossible to separate what you saw in that movie or that show and do your own visuals. So you got a huge handicap if you're working from a pre-existing movie or what have you, okay? You are required to create a minimum of final images at the end of the assignment that will be critiqued. You don't have to print anything this semester anymore. I'm sorry you bought a box of paper, though you can always use it in the future, in the fall, if you ever want to come in and print. We can talk about that later. But I can't force you guys to come into the building anymore since no one has access. The look of the images is totally up to you. They can be people, objects, landscape, studio, natural lighting, whatever it is you want. It just depends on what kind of text you're using. And you're going to see us like encourage you to use certain different methodologies as we go throughout this project. If you choose to use a comic book or something that has visuals, just do not copy the imagery, obviously. You are allowed to have your final works is allowed to have some final obvious influences by them, but I prefer that you don't. I'd also don't change your ideas as semester rolls on because you have very little time to redo the whole project if you change your idea midstream. So this is why we're having Idea Day, which is the next class, where we're going to discuss, what is your idea, how you're going to get to it, what you need to do to kind of finish it. So you are going to be required to do an artist statement. Don't worry. A lot of people have done artist statements before, and if you haven't done one before, I can easily provide you with an example one and like a guide on how to do artist statements. But they're really just kind of the guts of what you were trying to do, how you were trying to do it, and how well you think you did. That's it. I'm not a writing professor. I'm not going to force you to make this beautiful thespian essay. Really, it's just going to be your thoughts, what you all that kind of stuff. So I'm very regimental about this. single space, single page, Times New Roman. Just have a couple pictures at the very, very end of your images. And this is the kind of thing I have to turn in to the university for core classes. They need to see what everyone's kind of working on. And so your artist statement is kind of a description of what you did. And at the on the second page, you just threw in a couple pictures so there's a visual of what you're talking about. So that is due on the final, on the final deadline. You don't need to do that early. So Idea Day is the next class. It's our Wednesday evening class. Think about what you want to do for your project and fill out a questionnaire, which I have placed below. And it's going to push you to ask questions about how you're going to do your project, what you want to do with them. Write like 30-ish words describing kind of, convincing us of what you want to do. And it's not just me, you're going to convince each other. You can even throw in some drawings or some photographs at the very bottom of the page, but I'll show you what I'm talking about here. You need to make sure, in a second, make sure you have this done far before class, because if they're not in there before class starts, then you can't get any feedback. You're late then, because as soon as class starts, we all dive into everyone's stuff and just kind of start picking through everyone's ideas. So you have to get it done beforehand. So here is the link to our Google Drive, and you can see that if you're in one of my classes or another, you may not recognize names, but it's the last names of one of my classes. So I ask you to read this first, and this is pretty much just telling you which group you're in. So you can kind of keep this open on the side. There's one group, there's a second group, there's a third group, and there's a fourth. And these are the only people you should be looking at. I don't require you to go through the entire class and give every single person feedback, just because it would take you too long. But really just a handful of people, and I want you to give them a ton of advice. Write paragraphs if you have to. Really kind of pull stuff out of like what they're trying to do. How's it going to look? You guys have been in a mid-critique before with me, and you know what I'm talking about. Similar to what we did for the portrait project, though, we're at an earlier, rougher stage, so you're going to ask everyone all those detailed questions. So in here, I'll just grab the first person. You're going to see that I've already asked, let me see here. Oh, did I copy? I'll fix that if that's, no, okay. Sorry, Crusoe, I gave you the one a demo I already filled in. So I'll fix that. But here's what you're gonna get. You put in your name, and anything that's for the reviewers, the people that are looking at your stuff, they're gonna put it in green. So I made the questions for them in green. So try to make this really easy so you can do it really quickly. So you just, you the photographer, the person that's like talking about what you wanna do, you type in your 30-ish, 300-ish words. It could be longer, I mean, as long as you want it to be, in here. And then you kind of go through and answer all these questions like, what are you interested in? What are you going to be photographing? Do you need models? Do you need props, locations? Where are you going to get them? Are they going to be different ones? All that kind of stuff. And this is where I'm going to start asking the reviewers, the people also in your group, like pushing you or like getting feedback. Like, okay, so where are these props and locations? Give suggestions that are going to best fit your idea and fit to the text, whatever that text may be. Give suggestions. Maybe you have some locations you want to like, oh, this is a great spot, or, oh, you're not in town right now. Well, then maybe you can build something, or maybe you can use a simple backdrop. I don't know. You're going to find that out. What do you want to get done by mid-critique? And what do you want to get done between the mid-critique and the final critique? So you can start planning out your timeline. Do you have any other questions for us? There's maybe things I didn't think about because I didn't know your project until the day we're doing this questionnaire. So like, I'm not sure how to do this. I'm not sure how to do that. What are your guys' advice? And then here's some areas down here where your reviewers can write in green questions like these, like what kind of costumes do you need to reflect your narrative? Knowing what time of the year it is, the trees green at the time, or are they bare, or are you doing a poem about a snowy mountaintop, or a book or a novel that takes place in the dead of winter? You know what I mean? Think about that. If it's a desert scene, I don't know, in this book or in this essay, maybe you just need to make a fake backdrop, or you do tight headshots, or how do you trick us, or how do you use, photography to convince us of whatever it is you're doing. Now, these are just a bunch of examples, but they're going to ask you just a bunch of questions. So just make sure that you check them and that everyone fills them out, because you're giving them a ton of advice that they're going to have to run for between now and the mid-critique. So anything below here, I just highly advise you just add some images. There could be examples images that you found online that kind of get the idea of what you're going for. It could be drawings, it could be doodles. You're trying to tell us like what kind of layout you're talking about. It's whatever you need it to be. You can put as many as you want, that's fine. You don't need to be shooting anything yet, that's fine. I'm not requiring you to do any photography between now and our next class, but just like your thoughts, your ideas, rough stuff, okay? And this is what we're gonna look at here. So again, I'll clear this out later, but this is kind of what we'll see. I made an example file. Obviously, I need to fix that. But I just typed in one from like a class from years ago where someone did Alice in Wonderland, and they put in their examples here. And then, you know, this is what they're doing, Alice in Wonderland. And so the specific, like they answered the questions. I kind of answered for them. What are you going to be photographing? Specifically, friends of mine who will play Alice. I'm interested in seeing if I can get a few people to play the other characters. Maybe my brother can be the Mad Hatter. My roommate will be in town later, so she can be the Queen of Hearts. Because she had herself a little shot list, which I thought was really clever because this ended up being her shot list for each one. So she had to plan ahead. So think about that. I'm seeing typos left and right. So, and then these are people's responses right here. They put it in green. So this is Rob if he was reviewing a thing like, should you consider with enough costume changes and makeup, can you model yourself to be the characters or two? Like you can change things up. Susan had their own suggestions. You know, you can end up repeating kind of what you have the same suggestions. Like Rob and Susan could be saying this similar things, but I love the idea of everyone giving different advice. Or like, hey, make sure you consider this. If this may be a problem later, or we have rain for the next like week and a half between now and the mid-critique, so maybe you should shoot all your indoor stuff now, or I don't know. Or maybe your project is so like prop related that you need to build a little mini set. Maybe you should spend like the whole between now and mid-critique is a time to just construct. This is where you put in that kind of advice here. And again, I have a ton of those here, like do you need models, props, locations, like suggestions for where to shoot, how to shoot, all that kind of stuff. So again, I left this here as a good example for you guys to see kind of how you could respond. And I didn't even fill it all the way in. I filled in like halfway in. Hopefully you'll get way more advice than this. And you can see there's no images down here because I'd randomly have to grab pictures of Alice in Wonderland, but you guys get the idea. So you should easily fill this in so that at the end of idea day, after everyone's done, everyone has tons of advice and you've thrown your voice in the pool. So I encourage you to do that. In fact, I require you to do it. It's part of the grade now. Down here to April 1st, it's the mid-critique, which isn't that far away. The mid-critique is a little earlier because I wanted to give a little more time between the mid-critique and the final for you to really hammer out the majority of the project. So you're going to need to have 30 working images in your student folder. You know how to do this already. It's always due the midnight the night before. If this is just kind of giving you an update, so add a little Word doc. It doesn't have to be a Word doc. It can be a Google doc. And you put it in the mid-critique folder right here, but just make sure it has your last name so it sticks with your photographs, okay? So your photographs need to have your last name. And that short little that little Google Doc has to have your last name so that they're all grouped together, and so that we can not only all see what you're shooting, because you know someone may forget between next class and the mid-critique. What are you working on? I forgot. You know, I need to update. Or maybe it's really vague in the photographs. So that's what that Word doc is. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's really just saying like, this is what I've been shooting. This is how I'm doing it. This is what I expect to get done between now and the next critique. Okay. So for the mid-critique, we are going to have a Zoom little critique. I'm going to try to see if I can break us up into groups. I'm going to practice that, where you can break everyone into subgroups. I've never done that on here, but I'm going to try. If not, I'll change it up. But so make sure you have a Zoom account between now and the mid-critique because you're going to have to use it to log in. And make sure you have good Wi-Fi access. If you don't have great Wi-Fi access, if you're out of town, you're in your hometown, if there's a spot, I don't know, you could park your car outside of a library. Don't go in because we shouldn't be going into places. But a place that has good Wi-Fi and just steal their Wi-Fi and do it from your car. If you have to do that, I mean, I've done that. I've done that many a times when I've been on the road when a business is closed, but they left their Wi-Fi on. So I'll use their Wi-Fi for a meeting. I've done that many a time actually. So just take that into account and be prepared and test it out before the mid-critique. The final deadline, I haven't put the critique folder there just because I don't want to have the mid-critique and the final one at the same time in case someone accidentally clicks on the wrong link, which has happened in the past. But here's all that's required on the final deadline on April 20th. You have your 6 final pictures, or more if you want, turned into the folder with a minimum of 4 new pictures. So you could have shot 2 amazing ones for your mid-critique, and they're just beautiful. They're perfect. You don't need to reshoot anything. Moving on. And you do the other 4. That's most of them. That doesn't happen. Most people, not all, but most people are like, I should reshoot this. That's fine if you want to reshoot them and have 6 new ones. But, saving you as much time as possible, it's great to have those 2 ones nailed out perfect so that you don't have to turn around and shoot another 6 all over again. So it's due on April 20th, all the images, along with your artist statement, which there's a folder. It should be in. Oh, here's right here. Here it is. Turn your artist statements here. It's with your last name. So you can see I've already made artist statements, final critique, mid-critique, idea day. They're all there. I just put the links in here. So when you make that PDF, well, that's your artist statement. You're going to turn it into a PDF. Which is pretty easy to do. You can do it in Microsoft Word. You can easily just save as a PDF, and you can throw your pictures on the second page. It's not a problem. Just make sure your pictures aren't ginormous. So when I send this on to the school for the core program, they're not seeing like 10 megabyte files. In fact, they told me the number 2. That's what they told me. So that just make sure when you put your pictures into the second page of your Word document, make a low res file that's not that big, maybe a few inches wide. Because if you just make this gigantic file, you drop it into Word and then you scale it down, it may be humongous still. And again, I have a video at the very bottom that walks you through how to do that. So if you've never done it before, that's okay. There's a video at the end. Again, I want 30 new working images in your student folder, just like the portrait project. So here's a new rubric. Not much has really changed. I changed the points. You didn't see it before because this wasn't visible until now. But I made the final deadline worth a little more than the mid-critique. And you can see idea day. Turning in your ideas between now and the next class is important. It kind of gets the ball rolling on what you want to do for the project. And it kind of makes it easier on you for the rest of the project because you know what you need to do. You just need to make time to do it. Hemming and hawing over your project is what makes it so much harder. So, as always, you don't want to turn in things late. So helpful guide for what makes it work better, what makes it work less. You pick an interesting subject matter. Obviously, that helps with creativity, because remember, creativity is 50% now. So make it interesting. And again, if you're not sure about that, that's a good question to ask on Idea Day in your questionnaire. What's making this interesting? What isn't? What can I pull out or what can I add to it? You can always email me too. So you show us a new perspective that the written narrative that we've never seen. If you're doing something that you've seen before, then you probably don't want to redo that. You want to do something unique and different, or a new perspective of that thing that you've seen before, but you do a completely different take on it. There's a variety in things that you're showing in the locations. We're not seeing the same thing over and over and over and over. You playing with lighting. The lighting kind of fits the scene. It's not kind of overhead fluorescent lighting when you're doing a fantasy scene. Or if it's a simple, like it's supposed to be 2020 in the picture, and the lighting you're using just doesn't quite fit it really well. Because you can use crazy lighting if you want to, depending on the project. So just make the lighting, no, don't do that. Make it match, okay? You have this is similar as the portrait project, make sure the background makes sense. Is it distracting or is it non-distracting? Does it add to it or does it take it away? Lens flares, if the sun is hitting your glass, that can be a distraction. Playing with lights, make sure the white balance is set right, or it adds to the project if for any reason you're playing with it. Is there any progress between the mid-critique and the final? Is there any images that had problems in the mid-critique that you had to reshoot and replace between the mid-critique and the final? Or the problems that you had in the mid-critique were still there in the final one? Obviously, that hurts part of the grade. You want to progress. You want to make things work better. Obviously, if you turn in more than the minimum required and their quality, I underline that. Some people just throw in a seventh one, even though it's not much better, actually. It may not make a big difference. But if you turn in 7 or 8 or 9 and they're all amazing and they really add to the narrative, and of course, that's going to increase the grade better and better and better. Less points for the things that are the opposite of things that we add for. There are things in the backgrounds that are distracting us. The subject is repetitive in each image. You've seen the same clothing over and over and over, and it doesn't quite fit the narrative. Like, are we supposed to be seeing the person in one room for 6 shots? May not make sense. And again, you'll know, I guess we'll know when we see your project. So, make sure you think about that. If you're having technical issues, blurring, too dark, too bright, all that kind of stuff that we're all aware of now, you don't want to have those kind of issues this far into the semester. If your narrative requires costume or landscape, are those landscapes, or are those that costume, or is that backdrop, or is that DIY setup, or whatever it is you're doing? Is that adding to it? Here, did you turn your work in, or did you turn all your working images and your student folders? Some people keep forgetting to do that, and of course, points are taken off of that. So just make sure you turn in those extra little items that make a big difference. And then is your assignment turned in late? Obviously, that makes a big difference. So one thing right here I want you to remember is that if you don't know how to make a PDF, I made a little how-to video. It's really easy. It takes you less than like 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds. I do it all the time, and most of you probably are done before. If you haven't, that's okay. And here's a list of movies and scripts. Now, the only reason I insert this is because a lot of people really love the idea of doing their own photo rendition of a movie. And I say, I say be cautious about doing that. But if you're going to do it, then I would say please go back to the original script and get your own rendition of that scene or that whole movie or the second half of the movie that you want to do or whatever. So this is a fan-made website. And you can see there's multiple copies of certain scripts. And that's because some people have literally taken the original script from the movie before it was shot. And you can see maybe a version of the movie after it was shot, and maybe something changed when I Command plus I lost my location. But this is what you'll see more than one of the same one. Some of them are fan-made, where they literally just watched the movie and wrote the script. So that's why they're kind of fun to see. You can see this literally is word for word the entire movie, which is very helpful. So those are there if you need them. Again, I'm saying just be careful about using a pre-shot movie. But if for any reason you do, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is go back and either read the script or read the book it's from, or read that scene that you want to do, or I don't know. Again, you're going to know. But that's why I put it here, because it kind of comes up pretty often. Okay, I want to show a few examples of some really interesting stuff that some came from text, some came from methodology that's very similar to what I would encourage. And some of these assignments are just really epic in production that they fit really well with the kind of project that I'm giving you guys time for. So I may skip over a few photographers because I know some people in class are actually going to present on them. So this is Cindy Sherman, photographer that's now well known and very famous, but she started out with a practice when she first moved to New York a long time ago, where she described herself as a shutout, as someone who felt like isolated and liked being isolated and grew up on television. So she just spent a lot of time watching television alone. And so she ended up doing a body of work where she put herself into scenarios where she was like the people that were in the movies that she was watching. So this is not the 1950s or 60s. She shot these, I think, in the late 70s or early 80s. Maybe it was just mid 80s. I can't remember now. But she made herself look like the damsel that she saw in all the movies she was watching. So she was very DIY about it. She would literally just go to the location, set up a tripod and a timer, and just capture it. So we didn't have to have people walking the streets in period clothing or vintage automobiles driving around the way she shot them. She'd rent a hotel room sometimes and just use the room for the scene. Sometimes it required costume. And in her later work, which I'll show a couple of her later work, she does a lot of makeup, and now she uses Photoshop. Back in the day, she kept it really simple to just utilize these tableaus that everyone would recognize. So this is some of her newer work. She still uses herself. She only uses herself for her work, where she poses in front of a digital background that she will find or build, and they're themed off of certain genres of people. So this is one where she dressed as trophy wives. I don't remember if that was the name, but that's what she said in a documentary I saw. where she was trying to dress up with people that were of WASP class, is how she said it. And she loves to go to Goodwills and Hordes clothing and that kind of thing, and make her costumes and use makeup to kind of make different people that fulfill that category. It's a lot of stuff she found even in her closet. She'll just kind of over elaborate everything. I do love this series. I think it's really funny. This is another photographer, Adrian Sampson, who makes these scenes that look like they're from an evening premiere channel, NBC CBS like special. So they could be like science fiction, they could be cerebral, they could just be a drama. We don't know. And that's what's happening in most scenes. Is really unique lighting, very kind of cinematic television, premium or primetime television kind of lighting, which is not that hard to do if it's still photography. And then just like really mundane things happening in the scenes. So some of them are really mundane. I think this one and the next one are like just kind of casual scenes that are happening, and they're kind of shot in a cinematic form. Storm and brewing. I want to keep popping up to the top so you can see their name in the file in case you guys like their work and want to know more about them. I do love this one because it looks kind of simple. Looks like she's discussing or arguing with someone out of frame, but the lighting is it's very Hollywood. Like in your living room, you probably wouldn't have warm and cool lighting, spotlighting from different angles and directions. So it's made to look casual, but also if you know anything about photography, and I presume you guys are seeing like, yeah, it doesn't look quite like it was shot in someone's living room unless they brought in external lighting to make it look this way. So there's something kind of like, again, cinematic about it. They're so simple. So I don't know what the narrative is. I tried to read it in their artist statement, but I think their lighting and the actors and the models they use kind of tell us a narrative. And I think with your artist statement, you could easily fill in the gaps if you were interested in similar work. I do love the gaze in that kid's face right there. And this is some later work, which I don't think is interesting. It's more period based. I think the one that's based in current time is a little more interesting. So Al Smith's, she did a really interesting project. They got a huge feature in CNN long ago when it came out, where she took a certain text, tarot cards, and she literally made a mock-up of them, each card, with collaborators in, I think it was Haiti, I'm pretty sure, but soon after the earthquake they had there long ago. Not that long ago, maybe it was like 8 years ago, 7 years ago. And what they did was they used whatever materials were around them. And this was an art collaborative that was in Haiti. And she worked with them to build the photo series, but they literally came up with whatever they can find. Location, landscape, costume, background, you'll see in a few of them, to match whatever it is they have here. So I'll flip through a few of them. And again, at first you're like, okay, that's not a real horse. But you're like, yeah, where are they going to get a real horse? You know, in the streets in Haiti, like. And again, this art collaborative is based in the slums of Haiti too. So which they utilize that in their project, which I think is really charming in a lot of ways. So I hope you may know something about tarot cards. I know nothing. This is like the 5 of staffs, or I think, I'm not quite sure. But they're trying to emulate like the scene, the pose, the landscape a little bit, to a certain degree. And I love they're just like neighborhood people, like just, they're not professional performers or models, or just whoever they could grab that was in their collaborative, or friends of the people in the collaborative. So the Ace of Wands is supposed to have a ray of light coming out of it and like the smoke. Well, where they're going to make a ray of light, they're not using any special lighting effects. No strobe kits, nothing. DIY is the rule they made on this. So they just set the wand or the staff on fire and just shot the picture of the flame on fire. And of course, they're using the streets in the background as their backdrop. King of Swords. I do love that they pick a prop to be the wand or the sword or the goblet or whatever, and they consistently use that same prop over and over again throughout the whole series. So they use a machete, which are pretty easy to get at any hardware store, pretty much anywhere in the world, and they're pretty affordable too. As they're using that as the representation of the sword. So you'll see here the 9 of Swords. And I do really love the coloration in the new one. Actually, I like the new one way better than the old painting. Actually, I think it looks really nice, and they're pretty much mimicking it. Not perfectly. You see the lines aren't exactly the same, but you can see the obvious influence, and that's what they're trying to do. They paired them up together. I do love the ones where they go out to sea, and there's another one where they're using the sea. They didn't have a coffin or a sarcophagus or whatever, so they used a shipping container, and they put the sword on the side and three more swords vertically up top. They didn't have a stained glass window for a church from a crypt, so they just used like a kind of classical medieval looking kind of style art piece. Now I don't know if they made that piece for this photograph or if they just had it from the art collective. They just had it laying around. I'm not quite sure. So instead of having a heart floating in the sky with rays of light and the sword stabbing through it, they just laid the machetes on the ground and used sand or dust. I'm not quite sure what they used to make this. Maybe chalk? I can't tell, actually. But I thought it was a fun little DIY way to make these kind of graphics. So they're supposed to have the rays of light coming in from behind the hand of the sword here, and the smoke. Of course, without special effects and special lighting, how do you do that? So they use someone welding in the background to kind of be the flare with the hand. Now, I kind of wish it was a little to the right so that the flare was right behind the hand, but I see what they're going for here. Just tape the crown right here. But they're getting really creative with this. Yeah, this one's great. The original card is supposed to be snowing out here, and where are you going to get snow in Haiti? It doesn't snow down there. So they're using sawdust to kind of sprinkle in front of the camera, so it looks like it's snowing on the location. Though, if you look really close, you can see they're kind of brown-ish tone, so it gives away that it's not snow. But again, they're trying to stick with the theme. The goblet is a pail. I really, really love the little top hat here. And I do enjoy that there's a boat here in the background. There's two boats, but they have a boat right here out in the water. Now, I don't know if they had their friend go out there and get in the boat for this shot, or if they just found someone out that's fishing at that time, and they just posed in front of it. Who knows? The Hermit, I really enjoy that. The flames kind of flickering out a bit. Kind of reminds me a bit of this one right here. It's nice they have a little dog, and they found a little dog, so they used the little dog, and they're using this looks like a cliff overlooking mountains and like a horizon line. And here they found their own mountains, which they do have mountains in Haiti. They overlook the city, so they use a rooftop to shoot this so that you can get that. And I actually really like this composition here with the line, and the line down to the little dog looking up at him. It's like perfect. Since again they didn't have a horse, they had the little kid riding a horse. So they had the little kid riding a little fake horse. I presume this is the same head we saw earlier on the other picture. The star, trying to mimic the number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not quite the same. Maybe they're hidden somewhere I'm not seeing. So they don't have the scale, so they make a scale. Oh, this one. So they didn't have a skull or even a costume of someone in a skull to play death. So they just covered the person's face with paint to make it like, or I'm not sure what it is, if it's gel medium or something, and then carry the skull and the staff instead. So they're trying to reference death here in a way, and kind of use the background in different ways. You can see that these little tents back here. I was going to skip over this person because one of you two classes is actually covering this artist. They're really interesting photographer that works in Africa. And another group is using this, so I'm going to skip over him and let them get the gold. Here we are, right here. So this photographer was inspired by advertisements for travel photography or travel agencies. So photographs of like, we were here, look at us, you should, come to Hawaii and stand on this cliff, or come to Israel and stand in front of the wall or whatever, like just like posters and billboards and placards for tourism. So what they did was they got a spacesuit, and I don't think it's a real spacesuit. It's like one you can buy online. It looks like a nice one, maybe one that's cost a couple $100, not a cheap one for Halloween. But they went to a real a desert here. I think it's in North America out west, and they posed there. in a lot of these very touristy scenes, the way people try to get their self-photograph. Now, I don't see people doing the jump photograph as much as I used to see, mainly because I think it's really hard with smartphones to get the jump photograph now, to get the timing just perfectly. But this used to be a very common thing people would do at a real location to try to catch themselves up in the air. And you can see the couple, so it's like, me and grandma are here on Mars, having the time of our lives. And that's what it looks like when you put them in this kind of desert scape. It looks like they're on Tatooine or Mars or, I don't know, Venus or whatever. I'm not Venus, that's not a gas planet. But anyway, you're getting the idea. They're trying to play with the idea of like interstellar tourism in a way, with just a simple costume and a simple landscape and then the poses. That's it. They didn't really have to, yes, the costume is probably elaborate to get, and yes, you got to get to that location. But once they were there, they had all the tools to just kind of go crazy and have a lot of fun with it. They're little posing for the camera there. Peace. I love this one. It looks like they set up a tripod because you can see their footsteps walking to where they're standing. So they set up a tripod, put a timer on, ran all the way back here, turned around. They're like, okay, wish you kids were here with us. I always think that one's very funny. This one's interesting. This requires Photoshop, which you are allowed to use Photoshop if you wish to. You know, the advice I have is if you're going to Photoshop, just make sure it looks good and sharp, because I'm going to be just as particular about details with Photoshop as I am if you're not using Photoshop with your shooting techniques. So, but this is someone who did use Photoshop, and what they used a dollhouse. And from what I understand is they found a dollhouse when they lived in Poland, and apparently it belonged to a family long ago in the 1940s that ended up taken to a concentration camp and killed because they were Jewish. And so they ended up making a reenactment of what they guessed that family's life was like in those final days while living in their house before they left. So this is actually a real dollhouse. You see it in the background. And then you can see the miniature fabric. And they Photoshop actors into the scene. So they're just mundane scenes of just everyday life. But it's inside this dollhouse, which it takes you a minute to even notice it. You're like, oh, I guess that does look kind of small, or the frying pans look kind of odd, or you know, they did a pretty good job with photoshopping these individuals into the scenes. Here's a few of them right here. So yeah, it's kind of hard to do what they're doing. Not impossible. You don't need special lighting equipment to do this kind of stuff, actually. You just need some clamp lights and light your actors the same way the light is casting through the windows in this dollhouse. So this is like window lighting. Obviously, it's a window. To do the model, the actor, they just need a bigger opening instead of this tiny little window that's probably a couple inches tall. They need something that's maybe 4 feet tall. So a big softbox or a big reflector, you can think of it that way. And then just kind of mimic that. It makes it real easy. You know, all I got to do is just start doing the cutting in Photoshop. So that's the last photographer I have. But as you can see, they're all over the place. Like they really are. And that's the idea. I try to show people that are doing really DIY stuff, people that are doing really elaborate lighting and setups, people that are doing just simple portraits, and which I guess a few of them are the photographers I kind of skipped over, but it's really, really, really open. I want you to believe that you can kind of do aesthetically whatever you want. You can make miniature setups, you can use actors, you can do everything. They can all be still lifes telling a narrative. They can all be landscapes telling a narrative. It could be anything. But that's what Idea Day is for, is to really kind of hash that out. So kind of pick whatever text you want, whatever it may be, a poem, an essay, a book, or a chapter in a book, or song lyrics, or whatever it is you want. Find a way we can start turning that into a body of images, and we can talk about it. Yeah. And again, if you have any questions, I added to this. Helpful videos and aid. I inserted this on the other assignment. But helpful Zoom aid. Same thing I had earlier on how to get your account and how to kind of make your own Zoom. Well, that about wraps her up. So I just wanted to point out that at any moment, if you have any questions, you can always email me. You can Zoom conversation with me. I'm open to Skype or any other ways of communication. Just because we're not meeting in person doesn't mean we can't physically have one-on-one critiques or advice or questions or advice about anything that is not even connected to this class. If it's about a photo grant you're applying for or another class, or I don't know, just anything about art school related or art related or this town related or camera related, I'm happy to still have a little Skype meetup or Zoom meetup and discuss that. So don't be a stranger. Good luck, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.